Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon with the MBA Recruitment and Admissions team. My name is Clarissa Martinez, and I'm the MBA Recruitment and Admissions Manager here at Said Business School. And I'm joined by some of our alumni who have gone and joined some entrepreneurship journey. We have 5 people today joining us, and I will ask them to introduce themselves in a minute. We're just waiting for everybody to join, so I can see the number of participants is going up. So thank you again for joining us wherever you are in the world, whether it's a morning or afternoon. We have with us 5 MBA alumni that have gone through the journey of the Oxford MBA and the Oxford experience, who are so excited to share with you what were the best takes out of this incredible year of 12 months that go so quickly, and how they were able to maximize that time to basically become founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs of their own venture. So I can see here the numbers are still going up, so that's great. I'm just gonna let everybody introduce themselves to begin with. I'm going to start with Ife. So Ife, if you wanna tell us what is basically that you do, how long ago did you finish your MBA, what class you're on, and so on, and we will talk to everybody else as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Flo, and thanks for the invite. It's always great to do stuff for the Oxford MBA, even if we've left a couple of years ago. But hi everyone, thanks for joining this. It's also great to see some familiar faces. Bartek and I were in the same year, so hi Bartek. My name is Ife Oluwa. You can call me Ife. I'm Nigerian, but I live in England now. So what do? I run a company called Swift, and Swift is a strategy advisory firm, focused on supporting startup founders with everything from ideation, strategy development and implementation, all the way to launching a product or a service that gets in front of people who are willing to pay for them, right? Additionally, I also support people who are serious about applying for the UK Global Talent Visa, which is a visa that I switched to, at the end of last year to live here in the UK and work for myself. So in a nutshell, that's what my company does, really supporting startup founders and also professionals who are looking to take big bets on the ideas and help them figure out the missing pieces. In terms of when I graduated from Oxford in 2022. And I should say it was such a fantastic year. I'm happy to talk more about my Oxford experience later on. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Ife. Now let's see, Atherton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Atherton. I am from Zimbabwe, and I did my MBA between 2016 and 2017. I'm the founder and was the CEO of Lupano Diagnostics Limited, a company that develops medical diagnostic tests. The company is looking at developing diagnostics for some of the challenges that we have in healthcare, for example, sepsis prognosis, cancer, cardiovascular diseases. So the idea is that in the comfort of your home, you can run this diagnostic test, which looks like the home pregnancy test, but can pick up to 50 different things at the same time. You can use your phone to simplify the result readout, and then you can take the steps that are recommended after that. So medical biotech diagnostic company.
Great. Oh, that sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that. Thanks for that. Bart, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Bartek Oganowski, originally from South Africa. Make sure that I'll never lose the South African accent, no matter how long I stay in the UK. Finished my MBA in Oxford 22, so it was a 21-22 year class. Hey, Ife, good to see you. And co-founded a company called Levra. And what Levra is doing is solving the human skills gap, particularly between university students and the professional working world, and helping improve those communication and social skills in the workplace, using immersive and new technologies. And thanks for having me.
Oh, 1 second. Can you see my screen, guys?
It's gone black.
1 second. Technical. I'll just share it now again. Okay, we're back. Thank you. Thank you, Bart. Thank you so much, and sorry about that. Matt, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Matthew Delahaye. Very happy to be here and to see some familiar and friendly faces. I'm from South Africa, was at Said, at Oxford 2013 to 2015. I did the 1+1 program, so started off with African studies and then went to the business school. And after that, I co-founded a company called Employ, which started out as a marketplace business connecting employers and companies in the hospitality sector, which was kind of evaporated by the COVID pandemic. But we pivoted that model and are now kind of a software platform focused on selling to large enterprise customers that helps them to bring kind of the best advances of the consumer internet to the experience of finding and applying for a job and getting hired.
Great. And when did you graduate? What class?
I graduated in 2015.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Matt. And last but not least, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about your journey.
Thanks, Flo. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Always fun to reconnect with Oxford students. So I'm also South African. I was in the class of COVID-19, you could say, but graduated in 2020. So unfortunately, halfway through, the pandemic struck in my year, but it was still an absolutely incredible experience. I work for a company called the Beam Network. It's a startup. It was founded about 3.5 years ago now. So it was the first thing that I did, or the first formal thing I did after the MBA. And essentially, we are a company that basically helps women wealth holders to become more empowered in their financial lives. So we have a full academic curriculum that covers all aspects of finance and investing in a really fun and safe space. It's a global membership network. We have women all over the world, part of our network, with collectively what we call assets under education of about £1 billion. And we're very proud to support that number because ultimately we want to help women to really step into their power with this great wealth transfer happening in the world where women are becoming, a lot of wealth is becoming controlled by women. In fact, will be a majority of wealth in the UK and in even the States by 2030, which is a massive shift. So how do we help women to really step into this power? Because ultimately we know that when women invest more capital goes to more inclusive and values-aligned investment. So we want to ultimately try and help to mobilize capital for good by seizing this opportunity.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Thank you so much, Lisa. That's fantastic. Well, I know the audience is going to have a lot of questions for you guys, and obviously each and every one of your ventures is incredible, and I would like to hear more. We are now going to encourage everyone that's attending this recording session, this webinar, to ask any questions in the Q&A box. So you have, and you will see at the bottom of your screen, a Q&A chat where you will be able to ask questions to our panel. Either you can ask directly or basically ask everybody. I see that some questions are already being written in the chat, but I will start with one generic question I want to ask everybody. And maybe Matt, you can answer first, as you finished in 2015. So I think you're the one that finished a few years back. The oldest, no. But basically, and maybe this also will apply. This will apply for everybody, so I will expect an answer for everybody. But did the Oxford MBA spark your interest in entrepreneurship, or were you already with the idea that you wanted to become an entrepreneur? Because some people come to the MBA with one thing in their head, and then they decide they want to become entrepreneurs. Was this your end goal all along, guys?
I didn't arrive like wanting to do the MBA in order to come out the other side as an entrepreneur. I was pretty unsure of exactly which direction I wanted to go in. I think a bunch of experiences on the MBA made me think that it was, possible perhaps sooner than I had imagined. One of those was, doing the entrepreneurship program and being able to test out conceptually a bunch of the ideas that would become the first version of Employ, and also getting a sense of, you get to peek behind the veil and see the stories of other people who had started businesses, or who were going to, and realize that you weren't all that different to them. And then finally, I think just like the volume of stuff that goes on at Oxford, and the requirement to manage complexity sets you up pretty well for going into the storm that is trying to start and run a business.
Yeah, I can imagine. You get exposed to so much that you just think, oh, maybe why not? Thank you. Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, similar to Matt in that I didn't actually go in thinking that I would pursue this path, although I had worked in entrepreneurship development before. But yeah, and especially with the pandemic afterwards, I think I just pursued kind of low-hanging fruit that ultimately I thought, I'm always a fan of, because I think when you take those opportunities, amazing other things happen. And so it kind of was serendipitous, essentially. And in a way, I wish I'd taken advantage of some of the more of the entrepreneurship offerings at Said, but totally, I think there's just so much going on that the agility that you learn and the ability just to cope with many different things that are thrown at you prepares you so well for the journey afterwards.
Yeah, I guess 12 months of intense lectures and co-curriculars, and it kind of resembles the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It is new, isn't it? Thank you so much. Aoife, I know you worked in technology, and now you're like also now a founder. So how was that transition, and how did you see yourself in the MBA? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
I mean, I'd say generally it was my MBA. I was very open-minded, and I think that's one big advice I'll probably give a lot of people on this call. So you might start out doing something totally different from what you then evolve doing a year later or 2 years after, right? So right after the MBA, I joined, Amazon, AWS, and now I'm running my own company, right? So I'd say I was very open-minded, and so that helped me with a couple of the strategic things I did. So for example, while I was at Oxford, I was a very big part of the Creative Destruction Lab, CDL, which was, a startup accelerator working with actual startup founders, strategically, and it was something I thoroughly enjoyed doing. Right. So I'd say being very open-minded really sort of like helped me to then evolve and make the transition to where I'm at today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Atherton, what about you? Were you coming with your entrepreneur hat, or was it something as well that you got inspired by the MBA?
So I had just finished a master's in nanoscience in South Africa, and I had been working on making a rapid diagnostic test for Ebola. And so coming onto the MBA, the question was, I want to start a company, and I know how to do the science, but I need to figure out how to do the business. So the MBA was really helpful because of that entrepreneurship project that Matt alluded to earlier, because we got a group of 4 others, students, and we really worked on it. And what we worked on became the bones of what Witana became. And it also really helped us because the company was acquired a couple of months ago, and until the eve of the acquisition, I would also call my EP team, and they would help me with the different things, be the deck or the financial model. So it was really helpful to come to do the MBA because I met people that really helped me with the process.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Bart, what about you?
So I was at Deloitte before for about 7 years. I came from a very corporate background before doing the MBA. Was meant to be in the COVID year, and decided to defer my MBA during that year. In hindsight, probably a very good decision, just based on faith in who I met in my year of the MBA, and which is now my co-founder. But during that year, I actually went to go work at a startup in South Africa. So I almost had a soft landing, knowing that I wanted to use the MBA year as a bridge between corporate and entrepreneurship. And that was kind of like a good way for me to bridge that gap. So I came in knowing that I wanted to do my own startup or co-found company. Had no idea how and what to actually achieve from there, or how it was going to all play into fate. But used the entrepreneurship project as a springboard, met my now co-founder Emily, So absolutely a big pivotal role and definitely a perfect springboard for that transition.
Great,
Yeah, and actually, I'd like to add also, I actually wanted to become an early stage investor just because there is such a lack of women investors at the early stage, especially in Africa. And so I went there to plug my financial skills gaps. And so some of the courses, you know, that really looked at, I mean, even though maybe they wouldn't have been my first choice usually because there's so many fantastic courses, but I was determined to do, you know, there's a private markets course with the amazing Ludovic Filippo, and you know, one on financial statements and all of these things. If you want to pursue that path, they can really support you, and those ultimately were extremely helpful in you know, managing the financial side of a business and all of those things.
Thanks, Lieutenant. That's a very good point, and actually kind of ties very well with the next question that I think that a couple of people have asked. Some of them have asked if any of you started your business before the MBA, but I don't think any of you, correct me if I'm wrong, started your venture before. It was all after. So one of the questions for after the MBA, so if you started your business after the program, what elements of the program had the greatest impact on your now business venture? So this is something like you were mentioning, you know, some of those lectures, perhaps the EP. So who would like to answer this question? What are the elements of the program that had the most impact on your journey as an entrepreneur? Let's go for
Take a step. Oh, sorry, please.
Well, thank you, Atherton. You can start.
Thank you. So the first would have been the academic material as a whole is designed in a way where you get to learn a lot about different things in the world. And that's really helpful because as a founder, you're going to be navigating unstructured problems. And one of the questions is, what is the structure that I'm dealing with? How would I put this as how would I write this in an academic way? It always helps me to frame my problem and better understand it. I was listening to Mark Van Treska describe what an MBA is in one of his in a conversation we're having, and he said it's a set of lenses that you can look at the world from. So if you're looking at something, you can put on your accounting lens and look at it and say, does it make sense from that lens? Your strategy lens, you can look at it from your finance lens, you can look at it from your whatever lens you want to do, and that's really helpful to actually understand what you're navigating. Then the next thing was the EP, which most people spoke about, which is really helpful to take an idea, ground it, and understand how to actually do it in a strategic way. Then the classmates and the alumni, that was really helpful. It's I can't even count how many times I've sent Matt an email or had a conversation with Matt and asked him for help, and he helps me figure things out and think through the things that we're doing. So it's more than the academic content. It's also the cohort and the alumni. And the last thing is that Oxford email address is really helpful. There was a time when I really needed to connect with people outside of Oxford. And so if I read about someone in a newspaper, I would write them an email with my Oxford email and they'll reply. And a lot of those people are now colleagues and friends. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Atherton. Ife, what about you? What are the key aspects of the MBA that you think that, oh my God, like anyone who's looking into this journey should definitely or take advantage of?
I think just to add to what he just said, the good thing about the Oxford MBA is just the endless possibilities, right? So you have things that are sort of like already there, the courses, and all of those kinds of things. But I think when it comes to things like the extracurriculars, so things outside of like your day-to-day, things that you have to sign up for, I think it's something you want to try and take advantage of as much as possible. For example, the Creative Destruction Lab that I was talking about, separate application, you have to sign up for it. But the excellent thing about it is you're having to work with actual founders who are building businesses here in the UK, right? So if you look up, you see that the CDL is in Toronto, they're in a couple of places in the US. It's a very massive startup accelerator program where you're not just learning from founders, you're also learning from investors. So every time I got on, calls and meetings with the team I was assigned with, or just larger calls, it was a very, very big learning experience, very practical, very hands-on, because you just don't know when you're going to need to pull on those networks. And it was so funny because I was recently at a tech event and I saw I met the founder and I worked with on CDL for the first time. And I was like, oh, wow, it's great to actually finally meet you. And then we're going to do some work together. So just the exposure that it gives, one of the clients I currently work with, I met her, while I was at Oxford. Now she's doing a postdoc, but when it was clear that I started running the company, she reached out to me, and those are connections that, you're able to make because, you get on the Oxford MBA program. So I think big things I'd say is be deliberate about your extracurriculars. I don't think you should take on too much. Burnout is very real. FOMO is real. So be very deliberate and strategic about the kind of things you're taking on as extracurriculars. Make sure they, as much as possible, align to what you think you might want to explore at some point. And also be deliberate about the relationships you're building. Seek to build genuine relationships that, are impactful for different aspects of what you're trying to do post MBA.
Definitely. I think the network that the Oxford MBA brings is immense. I know people meet like their co-founders as well. Like sometimes the two people get together and they go like, oh, let's start something. And then you get inspiration from basically your peers. So that's a very, very good point. Thank you so much. Lisa, what about you?
So I think, interestingly enough, just getting in has actually been such a part of my story that I've utilized afterwards, because I did the GMAT 4 times. I think it was horrible. I did dismally. I on the same day even did the GRE just to try my best to get an even higher thing, and I submitted it, and it was an extremely tough process for me, but I did it, and I did it for myself. And afterwards, the sense of satisfaction that gave me, and I was just the happiest person to be there, for one, but also, it was encouraging to know that your classmates have kind of been on some kind of a journey like that as well. And everyone has an interesting story. And the confidence and kind of credibility, wrongly or rightly, that Oxford has given me, especially on an entrepreneurial journey, has really, it's a fact that it helps, and it's amazing. And so, I try and own that journey, and I'm really grateful for it, and the struggle as well. So yeah, getting in was one thing. And I think the second thing that Oxford is different is that it really does care about trying to solve real world challenges. And that means that it does attract, I believe, a holistic kind of candidate. It's not just people who are going to work in investment banking, although we need those people too, but there's a sense that, you can actually help the world to be a better place. So impact is kind of embedded with the Go-To project as well. And so it's certainly helped me kind of pursue a career that is mission driven in a sense. I mean, you can do everything. You don't have to become a social entrepreneur. You can go into tech, into finance and everything, but there's still that element where, that is recognized as important. And I really, really appreciated that about my experience.
Yeah, that is very true. The discourse, and for many entrepreneurs that come, it goes beyond the money making. Like, I think when I hear all of your ventures, I can see the element of like wanting to help, wanting to change, wanting to make things better. And I think that's something that you learn at the Oxford MBA, that it's very unique, the impact that you can have in others and the world. Thanks, Lisa. Bart, what about you? What would you like to add to that, to what your colleagues have already said?
Yeah, well, all very good points. What I would like to add is more of the networking side. And I think that is such a valuable part, which you often hear about it, that the MBA is valuable because of the people you meet in the network. Then actually only once you're in it, you start to see the tangible benefits of it. And the saying that immediately came to mind is life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And that is something that is absolutely true, especially for anyone thinking about doing an MBA or has done the MBA. Because all of a sudden you come from this much smaller, closed off South Africa, wherever you are in Africa, and you're exposed to 71 nationalities and 350 people. My year was just after COVID, so everyone was like back into the swing of things and just, I think, living every day as if it were our last, which was great. But all of a sudden you're exposed to a global mindset and a global thought. And now you're thinking about business, not just in South Africa, but thinking about globally, and also reaffirming the fact that as South Africans or Africans, we actually can make a difference, because now our values are important in this class. and people are listening and respecting what we're saying. So it gives you that confidence to know that, okay, we've just taken the step out of our comfort zone, but we can actually do well here. We can do well in this new comfort zone. And the second thing is also, it's a saying I picked up last week from a talk actually at SBS with some amazing professors that I went to in the AI space. And the saying was, all great discoveries come from curiosity and luck. And I think that's what the MBA is about. Like you've got to go be curious and meet the new people around and take as many. I mean, some people push it out a bit too far and push themselves at both ends, which I was probably one of those. But it also comes down to a bit of luck and where you position yourselves in that year. So it's network and people and just getting yourself out there, and that is valuable.
It's a great point about the Africa piece, because I think honestly it's incredible that Oxford really does prioritize students from Africa, and it's an incredible percentage. I think it's 11%. I don't know what it is now. It was over 10%. I mean, still a long ways to go, but globally it's much lower. So to know that there was that established support system, and I thought that the students from Africa were in our class just the most amazing. So that's it's a safe space to really be supported.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the Africa focus that we have, and that's why we're having like this panel specifically for Africa students who are interested in joining and perhaps want to like hear from fellow Africans. I think someone in the audience, but they're from South Africa as well. Like they say, you guys are flying the South African flag high. Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, what about you?
I mean, I was just going to build on what Bartek said, which was, you know, about the networking and the people you're exposed to, and obviously you have that a lot during the MBA and to the people on the MBA. But Saeed also exists in the context of Oxford University more broadly, and you know, through Hall or through sports or through your college or through whatever else you're doing, you're also interacting with a bunch of people who are very passionate about things that are not business, but are, you know, one, deeply interesting, and two, you know, oftentimes present opportunities for, you know, what could become a business, or what is kind of at the cutting edge of biotechnology or whatever it may be that they're looking at. And that produces a much richer and more wholesome MBA experience as well.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for adding on to that. Now I'm going to move on to the next question. So we have time. So in entrepreneurship, David is writing here. In entrepreneurship, obviously, capital is critical, and therefore the ability to raise funding. How did you go around this in your respective ventures? Who would like to answer these questions first?
I'm happy to respond.
I'll take a stab at it again.
I was saying I'm happy to respond from a perspective of someone who regularly advises founders, early stage founders, on how to approach early stage investments, right? And the things that I've worked with clients on. So a couple of things that I've seen happen is, the good thing is when you belong to a community like the wider University of Oxford community, there's a lot of ways to raise initial capital, right? So for example, I have a client who was looking to do a pre-seed raise, you know, but paused on that because there are just so many competitions that you can get into, win grant money, you know, that initial 5K here, 10K there, you know, really comes together, and then you can raise some initial, you know, cash to get things going, right? There's also so many startup accelerators, more than you can count, not just in the UK, across Europe, that are very deliberate about supporting founders, you know, with that early stage, you know, cash that you need to inject in your business. So I would say keep your options very open. A lot of people, depending on where you're at cash-wise, you know, personally, also do a bit of bootstrapping at the beginning. You know, some people also do like an early family and friends round. So people who are close to you that are willing to bet on your, you know, idea because they see the viability of it. So there's a lot of options. But I would say it's not an either-or situation. You want to explore as many as you can in the early stages, you know, as long as they're aligned with your ultimate business goals and plans. But those are some of the, you know, things that I would say are good to explore, particularly in the early stages. But, you know, whoever has raised any cash on the call can feel free to add to that.
Thanks, Ife. Bart, what about you? What do you think about like the way like students can go about like getting funding?
Yeah, the fundraising part is difficult, and probably a lot more difficult than we anticipated. My co-founder and I came from corporate backgrounds, so we're very used to, a nice check in your bank account at the end of every month. And that mindset of not having that for us, it was like 7-8 months that we weren't able to pay ourselves. It was a big mindset shift, and actually very tolling on us at that time. How we went about it was, before we decided to go full time, almost doing a present value of your own savings and like, how much risk can you actually take? Like, how many months can I actually survive in London, where rent is not cheap, to also be able to live a decent life before we have to start raising funding. So that was our first step, which is referred to as bootstrapping in many contexts. Then when we started raising a fund, if I look at our cap table now, we've got about 20 investors, mainly family and friends. We've got one VC, which is linked to Oxford, the Entrepreneurship Center, and a VC called Sterling Road, and then a couple of family offices that we had also met through the MBA. So it's really about, at that early stage, we went more like family and friends route, as well as Oxford links, and that is how that is our cap table at the moment. But a lot of conversations, a lot of learning, and at that stage, it's investing in the founders mainly, because we didn't have any revenue or any real traction as yet. It was more just investing in us and the idea. And we successfully raised a decent fund, and that's given us some life for the past year or so.
It is such an interesting point as well, to make, like, if those first few months where you are bootstrapping, where you don't know how it's going to go, and it must be scary at the beginning, obviously, like, especially if you come from a corporate job, like you mentioned. So it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. You have to have a certain mindset, but I think like the resilience that the MBA gives you allows you to, to think, get out of that comfort zone and try new things. Lisa, you mentioned you work obviously in finance, trying to get, in your venture, trying to get more women and get funding and accelerating, how do you see this from your perspective now that you are working precisely on that?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I mean, we know the scary stats, especially for women, in terms of, this stat that we're almost bored of saying now, that 2% of VC funding goes to women. I mean, it's hard for anyone. So it's certainly a challenge. And I think, we need to create more spaces where more women are in a position to invest as well. So, whether it's through models that de-risk, like syndicates, where they can put smaller amounts in community to just get more funding to more entrepreneurs. Obviously, we personally have been fully funded. We're bootstrapping as well, so trying to survive off our revenue generation, and that's been a journey because we're also trying to diversify our revenue streams in order to be a sustainable business. But we've been very lucky in that our shareholders are the 3 co-founders of the business, and they've fully funded the initial, provided that initial funding. But Oxford certainly, I mean, I know there's the Oxford Seed Fund. I know that there are other opportunities through Oxford that other entrepreneurs that I met on my program have utilized. And it's actually, something that perhaps, again, I should be looking at more, but certainly a space to discuss creative funding options and have that network that can support with fundraising.
Absolutely. What about you, Matt? How is your employ going? Like, how did that go? You're on mute, Matt.
Fundraising is always a tricky one. I think it's kind of, particularly in a very difficult funding environment, worth bringing it back to first principles. I mean, like, how much money do you actually need, and where are the places you could get that from? The kind of TechCrunch headline venture capital fund of loads of money is what you hear a lot about, but is actually the edge case for a lot of companies, and especially in what is a pretty difficult fundraising environment is much more difficult. We started out, I mean, initially I was kind of doing a freelance job whilst working on Employ on the side. So was my co-founder. We had no money coming out of university and starting it. And were basically, working in the evenings and on other people's time to get to a place where we had enough confidence that this was actually something we were going to dedicate our time to, and to had enough kind of traction or proof points to take it to other people and say, based on this, we think there is an opportunity here, and these are the reasons why. And then just put together a mailing list of people who we thought had money, or knew people who had money, started kind of communicating with them, took them on this journey, got to a place where we thought we were credible enough, and then we said we were raising an initial round. And I think our first round was £200,000. And we have kind of followed that model all the way through, and we've now raised a little under £4 million. But pick who you get your investment from pretty wisely as well, because they are buying a piece of your ass, a piece of your life, a piece of your time, and you want to be working alongside people who are helpful and who you want to be working with.
That is very, very wise to advise that. Thank you, Ahmed. And Atherton.
Thank you. Oxford's an interesting place because people are generally curious, and that extends to professors, fellow students, and other people around Oxford. And that curiosity is really helpful because it helps you to build a network with different people. And then the question of capital is an interesting one because trust and reputation are crucial to capital. If you're coming in from Zimbabwe and you've been in the UK for 6 months, it's hard for you to build a relationship with someone so much so that they are willing to part with £100,000 of their money, which they can do something else with. So the question becomes, how do you build trust and how do you demonstrate a reputation that allows for them to be comfortable with what you're doing? And it also comes back to the network and the concept of reputation borrowing, where if you have people around you who you are working with, who they know and trust, and those people vouch for you, then it helps investors to come in. It helps investor confidence. The second thing is that investment is risky by its nature, but an investor wants to know if you have the capacity to take this through difficult times. And then the second thing they want to know is if you have the resources to help you take it through the difficult times. And those resources typically come in the form of human resources. The skills that come in, who's on your team essentially is what they'll be asking. The beauty of a place like Oxford is that, and I'm talking about Oxford broader, not just the business school, is there are so many smart people that want to work on things that are really exciting. That building a team in Oxford is relatively easier than in other places. So at the end of it, you can end up with a team and a board that would help you to raise the funding. More directly, there are venture capital companies like Oxford Sciences Enterprise, OSC, which invest in companies. That's an interesting space because OSC almost always co-invests. So they know other investors that are in the area that they can work with. And then there was also Enterprising Oxford, which I am sure has changed its name now, when I was doing the MBA. That used to also help with the introductions to investors. And I think the other thing to say is that generally there's a lot of support and introduction to investors within the Oxford space. So it's not a, hey, how do I start? There will be introductions to the investor space. You've got OIN, which is the Oxford Angel Investor Network that's there. And so a couple of resources that are available. But from my perspective, it starts with not just having the good idea, but also networking and getting in touch with people and understanding how they're navigating the space.
Absolutely. Thanks, Atherton. Now let's move on now quickly to another question that I have here for you guys. If you were to choose just a single one thing that you have for someone who is watching this recording, do you say, what's the one thing of the MBA that you would do or wish you could do again? Because that would have helped you with your journey right now. Is there one thing that you could do again, or maybe you didn't do that you wish you could have joined, or wish you had paid more attention to? Matt?
I mean, I did a bunch of like finance courses, private equity, because part of me was going to be like a private equity bro, and I was going to go into finance and make lots of money. If I could go back, I would definitely do the things that are more like those are, I wouldn't go to the MBA to do like hard skills like that. I would have done marketing. I would have spent more time on the kind of bigger picture things that would have been much more relevant to starting a business.
Thank you.
Plus things like leadership perspectives from the humanities, which just give you the best out of an Oxford experience.
Good point. Lisa, what about you?
I was going to say the same with the leadership, because so much of running a business and managing teams comes down to people. And, I guess I just completely underestimated how much leadership, you talk about leadership as a skill and it sounds fluffy and things, but it's so huge at the end of the day. So perhaps more, I mean, I think I appreciated doing my finance courses because, again, I think it just gave me that extra bit of confidence that I needed to feel like I'd earned my seat at the table. So I'm glad I did that. But yeah, some of the leadership stuff and maybe taking a bit more advantage of the career center. But afterwards, I can tell you that my career coach, she was absolutely fundamental and pivotal in helping me to negotiate, to find, just to get my head right when I was kind of thinking about where to go. And that's a benefit it continues on. So that's something that I would highly just recognize as a huge benefit.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, that's another question that we will ask. We'll talk about the careers team in a minute. But what about you, Bart? Would you go back in time? What would you do differently?
I don't know. It's a very tough question, and to not sound cliche, like I wouldn't change a thing. But I honestly think that I don't think I would, because you have to learn. You have to go through those experiences. You have to make, hindsight's always easy. I guess the only thing is that, now with the mindset that I have today, I realized how much more value I could have got from those entrepreneurship classes, because there was probably so many key lessons there, which maybe I was a bit unaware of what they actually all meant at the time. So it's a tough one, but I think maybe just being a bit more focused earlier on more of the entrepreneurship offerings. And probably similar to what Matt said, I also did like finance lab, and I did a lot of finance classes. That was like a backup. And I'm not disappointed that I did it. It was amazing and probably gave me different perspectives, but maybe just entrepreneurship more early.
Well, absolutely. I think finance is, you need finance for running a business. So it's good to have that background and that understanding. Absolutely.
But coming from a finance background, say, so I did 7 years in Deloitte. So it's probably that was just staying in my comfort zone a bit.
Trying to not do, the same, just expand and explore a little bit more. Yeah. Ife, what about you? We'll talk about that in a minute. But Ife, what about you?
I think generally I would say I did a lot of the things I wanted to do. I think because very quickly I recognized that I'm only one person, right? And as much as I wish I could split myself into multiple parts, I couldn't. So I try to prioritize the things that were important to me, things that I wanted to do that were new. But if there's one thing that I wish I had more time to do, maybe I would say take advantage of, the wider Oxford community, right? You get so busy on the MBA program with everything happening back to back very quickly. 1 year spins by before you know it. But at Oxford, you're very fortunate to not just be in a business school, but to be in such a university where everything is happening, right? And just the connections that I made, the little connections that I made, I was very grateful for. But I wish I had more time to sort of like dig deeper and, explore more around, different people, doing extraordinary things in the wider Oxford University, PhDs, postdocs, even undergrads. Just, if I had more time to connect with more people, doing a lot of exciting and phenomenal stuff. But like I said, I was one person, so I did the best that I could with the time that I had.
Time constraints, time management is one of the skills that any entrepreneur has to very much have to master. Thank you, Ife. And you, Atherton?
The first thing is apply for the MBA. I know it's a thing where you're kind of considering, should I apply for it, should I not? Just apply for it. I think that's the first step. And then the second thing is, once in the MBA, if I could go back, I would say I would have spent more time outside the business school. and probably outside of Oxford. Because once the MBA ends, it's a beautiful year. Once it ends, my colleagues on the MBA can't really invest in my startup. They're great people, they can't invest at that moment. They will in years to come. But it's the professionals that are in London, the people that come to Oxford for conferences. These might not be conferences in the business school. These could be conferences in other schools. These could be conferences in the universities in London or in Cambridge. I think that networking element, which is not just networking within your cohort, but also with people that are not within your cohort, people that are professionals, that would help you to navigate the reality of starting up a company. Because there's a couple of things that we actually need to learn. Stuff that is crucial, the founding part point of a company, as well as how you run a company. And that comes with experience and a couple of gray hair, which is a bit lacking in the MBA, which is a good thing, right? So that's what I would say. But definitely, please apply for the MBA. It's an experience within itself to apply for it. You learn a lot about yourself.
Yes, I think that most people, hopefully, that are joining us today are like almost ready to submit their applications and have that like journey of like applying. Actually, some people are asking for tips for standing out in the application for an entrepreneurial idea to stand out. But I guess for some of you, when you applied for the MBA, you didn't necessarily put that your plan was to become an entrepreneur. But if you did, if any of you put on your application that you want to go into entrepreneurship, could you share that with us? How did you go about putting that in your application? See, no, it's all happened because of the MBA, guys. Like, that's why this is going to change your life. You come in with one idea, but then you come out with another. So yeah, perfect. No problem about that. So we will answer those questions. And for the person that has sent us a question about the entrepreneurial idea to stand out in the application, you can contact me or my colleagues at the Oxford MBA. We can talk about how for you to best put your ideas down for your application to stand out. Thank you for that. Now, the next question I have for you guys is about the careers team. Someone's asking if you use the careers team. I guess it's a contradiction sometimes thinking, oh, why would I use the careers team if I'm going to become an entrepreneur? So Lisa, you mentioned that you actually use your career coach. So how do you think that the help of the careers team help you with that?
Yeah, I hardly utilize the career center during my program because I think I was just so curious and doing different things rather. But towards the end, I started working with a coach, and she's just been so phenomenal in helping me back myself for one, and ask for things that I would absolutely have thought were way too out there. And so she kind of she has given me the confidence and the structure then to go and ask for things. And I'm talking mostly here in the negotiation realm of salaries, because our startup is slightly different because I was employed by the company. But even so, as a startup, she helped me to think through, in a startup, you want to generally you think, well, the upside for them to attract talent is through equity. And she actually said to me, well, while the startup is not worth a lot, go for a higher base salary. Don't try and get a huge equity chunk when you don't actually know how the business is going to go. And that was actually really fundamental. She kind of was like, no, this is your worth, go for it. And so she helped me with the script. We practiced. I mean, she was available at 9 p.m. on a Sunday to help me go through these things. So yeah, and she's now continuously, even in my same job, helped me to think about what the next steps are, what are kind of the strategic objectives that I want to get out of the experience and the impact I want to achieve.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear that even on weekends, that's unusual. Any of you guys use the careers team as well?
I would say not necessarily the team, but I would say the faculty itself. So for example, if I think of someone like Pinar Oskan, who is one of the senior leaders at the faculty and the focuses on fintech and startups, and I think it's Thomas Hellman as well. Those are very strong members of faculty who are always open-minded about having conversations with people, and they're very focused on entrepreneurship and that startup scene. So I definitely advise those are the kind of people you also want to try and book some time with. to have conversations. I remember I got Pinar to be a judge on the Oxford Africa conference, that I was, a member of that team. And we had like a startup accelerator competition of some sort that I was managing. The Innovation Seed Fund, I think we were giving the winners £2,000 each or something. And Pinar was one of the people I reached out to be a judge on that competition. She was more than happy to. So just building those relationships, with members of faculty as well, have proved to be helpful to me personally.
Yeah, true. Like faculty members and your lecturers are also people that you will look up to and inspire you. And then Atherton, I think you mentioned as well about the lecturers, right?
Yes. Most of the lecturers are really interested in you as a person. It's not just about I'm delivering this content, but they actually are interested in you as a person. And the ones that have also started their own companies or that work with investors also help to be able to make those connections and to think through the process of how you're actually going to do this.
Thank you, Matt. Bart, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, particularly I want to talk about the Entrepreneurship Center and that sort of how that's helped as part of our journey, even to now, and I'm sure we'll continue to have good relationships. But the support that you can receive if you kind of just are brave enough to go and ask and get involved and engage with them is absolutely amazing. From introducing us to angel investors or funders, to getting us in front of, panel discussions and inviting us to conferences and making good connections, getting free tickets to conferences in Paris or whatever the case may be. So there's definitely been a lot of tangible help for startups through the Entrepreneurship Center, and we'll continue to help each other out when needed. So that especially in the startup world, that whole center is absolutely great and vital to form connections with them.
Absolutely, the EC, the Entrepreneurship Center is something that, maybe Matt, if you want to talk about, did you have access to it? Did you participate with them?
It was a long time ago. We, I was going to say, I mean, building on what Atherton said, our initial kind of advisors one of them was Hiram Samel, who was kind of one of the faculty members, super valuable to be able to lean on their expertise. I think one thing that I found valuable was the Entrepreneurship Center, the school bringing in, and we had Peter Thiel, we had the Twitter guy. You had these people who had really kind of done the journey that you wanted to set out to do right there in front of you. You could ask them questions, which I found very empowering, or kind of enabling to be like, these people who've really done this thing that you are dreaming of doing, and they're right there, and they're human, and they're real. So that exposure was very, very valuable.
Thank you so much, Matt. Well, I mean, we're approaching the hour, and I think that you guys have been so fantastic with answering all the questions from the panel. I wanted to say to everybody who's attending this webinar that if you have questions about, perhaps more specific about individual ventures and the companies that our alumni run, you could perhaps, if you guys are okay, to be contacted via LinkedIn, because I think sometimes it's good to network with people that are obviously like you guys that have gone through the journey. And if you want, you can find our panelists on LinkedIn and drop them a message if you want to ask any further specific questions about their companies. And we will be running another series of this alumni panel tomorrow with our alumni from finance, and on Friday we will have our alumni from consulting. So if you're interested in those as well, or know someone who's interested, please join us on those as well. I want to say thank you so much again, Aoife, Atherton, Bart, Lisa, Matt, for joining me and giving an hour of your time and giving back to the Oxford community. And I'm sure that maybe in the future you will be happy to do it again, but I would love to keep hearing and seeing your journey on LinkedIn, and wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a great day.